A brutal killer. A savage beast. Power made flesh. Woe betide thee, who his hungry gaze sets upon.
How is this happening? I have no idea.
I think it's fair to say that Tigrex is one of the most loved and simultaneously hated monsters across the series. He has been a legend of the series ever since its introduction in Monster Hunter Freedom 2, which incidentally is the first Monster Hunter game that I crossed that magical 100-hour mark, and thus was the first Monster Hunter game that made me truly, madly, deeply fall in love with the series. However, it's a bit of a dick. There's this early hunt, 1 star, called A Sinking Feeling. Simple really, you just gather some popo tongues. So you put on your basic bitch fluffy starter armor, head up to the mountain, and surprise, how'd you like a Tigrex? It is cruel, it is deplorable, and it is fantastic. The hunter becoming the hunted in one terrifying moment. To put into perspective just how Tigrex is, here is what a new player looks like after facing their first one. You'd think the village chief would mention that Popo are Tigrex's main prey before you get sent out. And interestingly enough, the Tigrex in that hunt is canonically the same one that chases you during the intro cinematic, which is a really nice way of weaving it all together. Now, Tigrex's legacy cannot be understated. He was unlike anything hunters had faced before. A flying wyvern by classification, but a pioneer of an entirely new way of them being constructed. No longer wings spread wide for flight, no longer aerial elemental assaults, no! We now had a creature whose wings are developed in powerful forelimbs, allowing for a strength, speed and maneuverability on the ground that was unprecedented. Coupled with relentless aggression, it was overwhelming. Tigrex was a wall and then some for many. Feeling unfair, feeling like there's no chance to fight back, feeling bullshit! But once mastered, he is, at least to me, arguably the most satisfying monster to absolutely dominate. Once you see into his eyes, and you are no longer afraid of what looks you back, you can play him like a fiddle, weaving with his timings, hitting his charges at just the right moment. You enter this ballet of death and you take the lead, and it is just magical, especially with the greatsword. He's one of the most got-ya-bitchable monsters. Oh! Got ya, bitch! In the entire series, and most of all, he led to Nagakuga, who of course is Bay. Now, okay, I want to take this moment to vent a little bit because if I don't, I'm gonna implode. Tigrex then is adapted for harsh environments, whether that be extreme heat or biting cold. His body is uniquely gifted at managing internal temperatures. This allows him to thrive in the desert, where his pattern is a camouflage advantage, or indeed in the snow, where his prey, well, is less than speedy. He is the aspect of strength, all about raw, uncontained savagery. Nagakuga then lives in more agreeable environments, lush, warm jungles, hiding as the assassin shadow, the perfect ambush predator, emphasizing speed, the aspect of agility, using it with precise grace to dismantle opponents. Together then, they surely cover everything. So what in ever-loving fuck is the point of Barioth?
Hello there.
Okay, it lives in the snow, it's not as powerful as Tigrex, it's not as fast as Nagakuga, it's trying to be the middle ground, the little shit, and then there's a fucking subspecies, Sand Barioth, that lives in the desert. Is it just trying to be Tigrex, senpai? Fuck! I really hate him! The Sabertooth theme's alright, though. Like, that's pretty cool. Out of the three of them, the three with this frame, Barioth can go suck my dick! So this might not have come across, but I'm not the biggest fan of Barioth. And admittedly, if I'm gonna detach myself, I can see the appeal, and he does add elemental attacks to this type of enemy. And look, I've got nothing against you if you like him. I just feel like they tried to make Tigrex again, but better, because people like Tigrex, and like, it might be silly, but it bugs me. It bugs me more than it should. There are things I should care about in life a lot more than this, such as why my tortoise Baka wakes up every morning and sits here staring at this wall for about an hour, ritualistically. And I think it comes down to, I see Barioth as wasted potential. I think you could have done so many cooler things with a third of this type of monster. But I've dedicated way too much of this video to this now, so on with the show. And, well, the thing is, Tigrex is really simple. There's not a lot to talk about, hence the meandering thus far. He is just a simple physical attacker, but he is one of the best designed fights, full stop. That it is so memorable and fun. When creating him, the brief very much was, we want a monster that's badass, but instantly recognizable as both what it's aiming to do and what it is as you see it. So they went, you put the tiger in the T-Rex and you get Tigrex. And thus he was born, that dinosaur-esque head glowering as the predator he is, the tiger colouring, and the movements inspired by both. He really is a beautiful fusion of real-world concepts. And he is all about charging at you, and then he charges 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 at you, and you get the picture. Occasionally he'll try and bite you, occasionally he will use his incredibly powerful tail, which is serrated to an edge along with spikes as one gnarly club with a spin attack, and he will also attempt to thrust his powerful falling forward, sending icy boulders at you at a distance, but mainly he is all about learning and dealing with the charges. When he enrages and gets even faster and more powerful, the blood runs red hot, glowing through his skin, the veins ablaze, and this serves to make sure that he has enough blood flow to keep up with the exertion he's now putting out, along with a overactive adrenal gland to give him a mindless fury as he loses himself in the lust for battle. A Tigrex that spends too long enraged will tear his own body apart. That is how much of a strain it puts on him, and his body copes the best it can, but it can't cope fully. But by far the most interesting feature of a Tigrex is actually his roar. He is known as the Roaring Wyvern. Because he has one of, if not the most powerful voice in all of Monster Hunter. His lungs are huge, taking up nearly his entire chestal cavity. On top of that, his rib cage itself is able to contract and expand to such extent the bones nearly snap in the effort. Doing this, he can bring in voluminous amounts of air, and then, like a pressurized air cannon,
that's incredible!
It all contracts in a near instant, racking the Tigrex's body with pain as he shreds his own insides to let loose the most potent roar known to the wilds, able to tear the ground apart, send hunters flying through the air with the sheer speed of his exhalation, and causing internal bleeding in all who are too close. The speed and force at which he can blast the air back out is uncanny. Naturally, this makes it very, very loud. If a Tigrex roared next to a jet engine, it would drown it out. This is why being caught near a Tigrex couple having a domestic is one of the most dangerous experiences in all of Monster Hunter. Tigrex, then, needless to say, is an apex predator. He can catch a Diablos' charge head on, stop him, and then snap the neck. He is almost unchallenged, save for the Elder Dragons. But with all that muscle, he is no slouch when it does come to speed, at least in the straight line. His drifting could use some work, though fortunately his turning is aided by anchoring over a 6-inch claw into the very rock beneath him as a pivot point as he scrambles for purchase, tearing great gouges out of the ground beneath him. It's not graceful, but it's effective. His top speed then is around 30 miles an hour, which as it happens is around the same running full tilt pace of a real tiger. So he really is quite quick. You're not outrunning that, not by a long shot. Imagine it running at you. Imagine seeing a Tigrex lock onto you with his precise senses and surprising intelligence, at least when not bloodlusted, and you see his legendary charge come cascading towards you, a veritable living avalanche of power hurtling at you, and there is nothing you can do. Honestly,
No!
if there was ever a monster in the entirety of Monster Hunter that I would ever describe with just one word, it would be Tigrex, and it would simply be badass. Because quite frankly, I don't think he needs anything else to do him justice.
But wait! There's more!
We have then the Brute Tigrex. Even if you can believe it, more fearsome than his normal cousin, this subspecies is, you could argue, evil in their aggression. They have taken to volcanic regions, the ash mixing in with their shell, giving them a darker, more dark look of less light. Okay, look, this one got away from me. But aside from colouring, he is a lot stronger. His forelimbs have grown thick with muscle to power through the volcanic rock and, well, the creatures that live within equally. But the most notable feature of the Brute Tigrex is the roar. Amped beyond what any reasonable person would consider acceptable, he is able to belt out even more shredding gouts of air, colossal booms of sound that ricochet and echo through the land he inhabits. All will know when a Brute Tigrex has claimed the land for miles around, sounding like a thunder crack or a volcano ready to burst. He can quite literally shred you to ribbons with slicing wind from the sheer pressure of his lung collapsing boom. But that's about all he really got. Moving on then to my favourite, Molten Tigrex. He is a rare species, and as such is not common. And as you might imagine, well, he really heats things up. Larger than all other Tigrex due to a quirk of their environment allowing them to grow ever stronger than should be possible, and their scales, through an as of yet unknown means, have taken on a Teostra-like blast powder quality. Their very makeup is explosive. So as the Molten Tigrex, now crimson and black, just looking sexy, takes damage as you hit away at him, you are damaging, breaking his scales, causing them to powder into the atmosphere, and well, kaboom. A perfect defense mechanism. Now, because he is so much larger, he is appreciably slower, but also appreciably more powerful, with colossally cleaving attacks that absolutely decimate hunters left and right. When he is angry, when he is pushed to breaking point, in a fury, his very muscles will swell out of his scales, pushing between the gaps and becoming visible on his very body. This then dislodges many of his own protective plates, showering the vicinity in his explosive glamour, and well, then the fun really begins. Now, he is a lot more, well, killable with his, raw muscles on display, but you don't want to get close at this point. So, how about that? A blast powder fueled Tigrex. But we're not done there. The final one then is a Deviant. Highly developed physical strength lets it trample anything in its way, and its raw power overwhelms the so-called technological strength that humans have spent centuries cultivating. Even veteran hunters shudder at its name, Grimclaw. And as a Deviant, they are unique. And in this case, this Tigrex sadly was born with his veins, well, not quite functioning as they should, the delivery of blood insufficient to his extremities, his tail, his claws, even his head. Due to this, well, his body is hardened and almost started to die, turned a blue colour as the flesh hungers for oxygen. But Tigrex, not to be deterred, has turned this to an advantage. Equipped with all you would expect from a normal Tigrex, but with the Deviant boost of better, faster, stronger, all of that good stuff. Wherever the blood cannot reach quite so well, because it's hardened, it hits like a truck. Absolutely wallops. The flesh no longer any give. It's like he is swinging round clawed stone for arms, and they destroy. Now, he is, well, a little bit in the older pain side of things, so he's very much the most aggressive of the Tigrexes, always looking for a way out, always fighting, hoping he will meet that end and end his suffering. So really, the hunters are just doing him a favor right now. And he can even create great geysers of steam after slamming down into the ground. I like to think this is due to just pure anger made real, but either way, he is, I mean, he's making it work for him, you know, good for him, honestly. So there you go, guys, that is the Tigrex family. Iconic, and as I said, badass. If we got them in Worlds, I mean, I could die happy. I love Tigrex, I do. He is one of my earlier walls, and I was so immensely fist pumpingly pleased when I first put him down. And his great swords have always been fantastic for crit draw goodness, on top of being an excellently satisfying greatsword fight anyway. He really has struck a chord with me, and I think he is wonderful. He really is a monster all of his own, and deserves every right to a place in any given Monster Hunter Top 10 Hall of Fame. I really believe that. And, well then, of course he would fit in World. He'd go nicely in the desert. He would be fine in the Coral Highlands. You could even get away with him in both the forest, probably. I mean, he can live anywhere. He's incredibly hardy and adaptable. Even the Recess he could handle a little foray into. Maybe the Vale the only place not, though a rotten Tigrex would be one hell of a Deviant. Please, can we get Deviants in World? They're so goddamn cool! And his armor would add, again, a little bit more flavor to the game. I kinda like the look of it. I wore it full set for the longest time in his first game, because I was like, he's the flagship monster. I'm gonna use his weapon, wear his armor. Look at me, I'm so cool! And, well, I did. And having permanent psychic abilities to sense where the monster was, and speed eating, I thought was just the best thing, alright? God, I was naive back then. Simpler times, and arguably happier ones too, but I think we can all agree, alright, he fits aesthetically, and he would be an absolute treat made real in Monster Hunter World's fidelity. Oh, I can only assume that one day we will. There's no doubt in my mind, even if it takes the next game, the ultimate version, whatever, we will get Tigrex. His legacy will live on. Like you've enjoyed this, guys. Let me know what you think of him. Subscribe for more. Let me know who you want to lorify next, and I will see you soon. A goodbye.
Rage Gaming with the video float.
But that's all that's really relevant at the mo, but I'm still gonna leave this up so you patrons know that I love you, even though the outro's no longer that kind of relevant. But the new one's being worked on, and it's gonna be a truly badass song, and don't worry, I won't be doing any rapping on it. I'm gonna go now. This was shit.